trying to get just to the agenda manager.
It's like one of the big three.
You're like Wonder Woman. Because you did a quick change and now you were in the jeans before.
Yeah, so we have to kind of,
Busy lady.
are we for that category? Are we
I seen Wayne and Craig done.
Should try the water.
administration?
Apple cinnamon water.
He was younger. He was 56, 7.
It's really good.
Exactly. Right, like we can't be like, what the heck? You know, I mean, we can't have it.
No idea. Are they in there?
It's easier to hide behind the policy.
Picture me? I never got a good picture.
Policy doesn't have, you do something to it.
I'm from the office.
We're gonna go
It's gonna be really great.
administrators in that position. And then, you know, we do owe it. I like having the leeway, and I like being able to help, to be justified. Yeah, sorry.
Was he able to work today, Jim?
Yeah, we got like,
Can you pull up the file of grad in the,
I guess 6 pools closed.
the whole?
Did you? Wasn't sure.
Welcome, everyone, to this meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Shippensburg Area School District School Board. We've got 2 items on our agenda, but they should not be equal amounts of time. Our first and hopefully briefest topic is our superintendent's going to review the profile of a graduate as this work was presented earlier to the board and the community, I want to say maybe in June, and we are just doing a sort of quick review based on some feedback that the community provided in regards to it, and so this is sort of the current draft, I guess. And then after that, we have a construction update as regards the athletic facility. So, Mr. August.
Thank you. I know Dr. Goetz has cautioned me to take about 5 minutes on this, and that will be a struggle because this is what I'm most passionate about. So just a reminder to the board and people who are tuned in, you know, this is the profile of a grad, which was created through a collaborative process where we got feedback from our students, staff, and community around what skills we want our students to have as they walk across the stage after a K-12 experience. You know, those categories are communicator, collaborator, innovator, thinker, a responsible person, and a resilient person. So you'll notice that these are not necessarily content skill or content related. They are skills and characteristics we want to be working on with our students. This fits and really, I think the important thing for the board to know and that we've shared with our teachers is that this is a tool that we use to teach students and engage them and help them with their well-being. So our 2 strategic district goals, you know, this is our North Star, and I refer to the profile of the grad as a North Star because these are the things that we want our students practicing and learning in classrooms that are not directly related to content. Difficult to measure sometimes, and that's what, you know, Dr. Donat is going to be working on with our teachers. How do we embed this? How do we use this as a tool to change our our instruction and make our teachers true designers of instruction? If you remember our images of school and a learning organization, you know, that's the role that teachers in a learning organization fulfill, is designing instruction. When I say this is a tool, you know, the hope is that this is on the table when a teacher or is in collaborative planning, and we are intentionally looking at ways in which we are embedding this in to our instruction. It's already there in many places. The goals of this were to make it, and this was hard because we're educators, so we like to use educationese. We like to make things complicated and fill it with jargon. So we worked hard to make this a one-page accessible, with accessible language, so that any student or teacher or administrator could hand this to a parent in the supermarket and they would understand what we want to accomplish with our kids. We got feedback on this, so before I forget, I need to thank Shannon Keach, did this and made it look all pretty. So accessing her skills, she did a great job. We did a thought exchange to get feedback on this. I'll just read a couple of them. The language of each piece is easy to understand and apply to different levels. I appreciate that it is succinct and fits on one page. It covers the most important characteristics while still being accessible. It is not overwhelming or overly exhaustive. I strongly agree if the characteristics were chosen. It's important to remember the big picture when working with children. These skills may be still developing and should be the focus. I love the concept and page design. It is a clear initiative to develop targets and goals for the individual. Hard to read the text in maroon bubbles. So the feedback that we got was you couldn't read the maroon, so you notice it's a little pinkish more than maroonish, but that was an important piece of feedback that we used. I believe a statement each time this is shown or discussed as to why this is important could be helpful. That's what we're doing right now, and we will continue to do in meetings and throughout the district. And this was an important part of our opening communications with teachers. So how am I doing on time? Not too bad. So my hope is you'll notice that this is on the discussion agenda. My hope is to have some board blessing on adopting this, and so that it's official, that this is an important piece for our students. Any questions from the board? Mission accomplished, Dr. Coates.
Nice. All right, well, let's move on to the next piece, which I think is also in your...
I'd like to call K&W, SiteLogic, and/or EI to kind of walk us through a construction update. So last time we met, we had an extensive look at all the projects except for the stadium project. As promised, we wanted to circle back and give an update on the athletic project. This is a smaller update. However, and probably for the lay person, the most difficult to understand. So in my conversations with Melissa and Carolyn, I tried to put an emphasis on, we need to know where we are in the process, and what decisions that we have to come up with. So, Melissa?
Hey, good evening, everybody. I spoke for a very long time the last time I was here, and I promise I'll keep it short tonight. I'm just here to introduce Jeff Schick from K&W, who's working on your master plan, and Carolyn Dubois, also from K&W, that's focused primarily on the athletics stadium project. And I just want to invite you up here. You can run through the project. They're here primarily to answer questions and, as Mr. August said, provide a timeline to help you understand how our multiple projects are overlapping with the schedules.
Thank you very much. So can you tell me how to change the slides?
You just say slide, and then it's going to magically change.
Okay, so again, I'm going to talk to you briefly about the stadium project. And so looking at the plan, so what it encompasses is going to be the running track, synthetic turf field, and grandstands, okay? So the project itself will include complete demolition of the existing running track that you have and the natural turf field that's in the center of it. Reconstruction of a brand new 6-lane, 400-meter, NFHS compliant running track. It's an asphalt base, but it'll have a rubberized running surface on it. Inside the track oval will be a synthetic turf field. It'll be a multi-sport field. It would be straight for 3 sports: football, soccer, field hockey. It'll have a drainage system underneath it. It'll be an infill turf system. And then home grandstands, visitor grandstands, just under 2,000 seats total. And we're going to keep, as much of the existing, for budgetary purposes to stay within budget, keep as much of the, perimeter fencing around the stadium itself as much as possible. One small section over near the detention basin will be replaced. The running track itself will have a 4-foot high chain link fence around it, and that's really to control access to the track and the field because it's an expensive item, and it gives you, now that we're going to have 2,000 spectators there, and it will have a perimeter walkway around it, but it gives you opportunity to control access. And then on the upper portion of the plan, it'll be the north side, outside the stadium fencing, that's where the stormwater management area would be, okay? So, and then to the west, on the left side, if you look at the running track, in that field there, that's where your field events, some of them will go. You'll have javelin, discus, and shot put in that area. And then if you look inside the track oval, you'll see the rectangle for the fields. And then the semicircular areas on the north and south of the field, we call those D zones. But that's where your pole vault would be in the south D zone, high jump would be in the north D zone. And then just south of the running track is where we'll have long jump and triple jump, all brand new. So in a nutshell, that's the scope of the work for the project. Now, from a permitting perspective, we are working, we have to go through Shippensburg Borough's land development process. So really, this is kind of a three-pronged approach. So we have to go through the land development process, which means we go through the Planning Commission and Borough Council. And then a separate submission that we do goes to the County Conservation District, and that's called for our erosion and sedimentation control approval. So that's a second separate approval. And then on this project, the parking has become a bigger discussion with the two projects that Jeff and I are working on. So we will need a zoning variance for the parking counts, and then for the new parking for the future high school project, we need a conditional use approval. If you have any new parking that's more than a third of an acre, you go through the zoning process. So we've got land development, ENS, erosion and sedimentation control, and zoning, 3 steps for the permitting process for the project, but they all run concurrently with each other. So we're doing them all at the same time, okay? So we've already made, at the end of August, we've already made our land development submission to the borough. We've already made our submission to the County Conservation District for erosion control, so that process is underway. And then the zoning package, we're still in the process of developing that, and that'll be submitted in mid-October for a November meeting, okay? So if you want to, next slide. So the stadium project is the top one in the red. So in general, what we're looking at is that the zoning process will be really a September, October, November. We're looking at submitting October, going to a November meeting. The land development process, again, it is in process. So in spite of the fact that we have to go through zoning, the borough has said, yeah, we can go ahead and get started on looking at the technical review for the stormwater management. So they've got everything in their hands so they can begin that review process. So we kind of keep things moving while we're waiting for other pieces of the puzzle to fall into place. So what we're looking at is that for the land development process, we would wrap that up in January, February. And then the MPDES kind of runs the same course. You know, it's been submitted, it's under review. It's a multi-step review process. And we would look at wrapping that up in January, February as well. And then going out to bid, February, and then start construction in March, April.
What is the problem with the parking? That's going to be the next gentleman's talking, or are you going to talk?
Well, here's the thing, is that for the stadium itself, you know, parking based on the zoning ordinance requirements, parking is calculated based on your seat count, okay? So for the stadium, if you have 2,000 seats, that means we need 400 parking spaces, which you'll have. You have 380 on the high school site right now. We're adding 20 parking spaces with this project. That's 400. But there's been a lot of discussions with the borough, but really the discussion was, well, what if there are events happening concurrently? You know, something in the auditorium, something in the gymnasium, things like that. So really, this is the part.
Carolyn, if I could just, could you move closer to the mic,
Yeah.
please?
So the parking counts is something that we're still finalizing on what would actually be required, because a lot of the parking requirements, and Jeff can talk about this, is based on the inside of the high school. how many seats in the gym, how many seats in the auditorium, how many seats in the classrooms, and then how many seats in office space. So anyways, but we're developing an overall number, and then that difference is what we have on site versus what would be technically required is what you ask for relief from in the zoning variance. So that's the part that is still very much in progress.
Is the junior high area included in the parking? Do you know?
That's part of the discussion. We're including it in our calculations.
But the borough may not.
That's part of this whole relief process. We have a total campus, because what they decided to do is just look at the campus as a whole. High school site, middle school site, everything cumulative together, the stadium project and then the high school project that's going to occur. So get a variance, look at everything together, and then get a variance based on the bigger picture, campus-wide.
You think we're going to get a variance? Do you think we're going to get a variance? Do you think we are going to get a variance?
There's no guarantees, but we've been through this variance. Sorry, excuse me. Jeff Schick with K&W. We've actually met you guys several times over the last few years. Whose faces look very familiar. We've actually been through this variance process twice before, and it's. To paraphrase Dave Jones, your solicitor, I mean, their ordinance is counterintuitive to itself. They have parts of the ordinance that wipe out other parts of their ordinance. So, like, just to do a parking lot, you need a conditional use. I've never seen that before. And then they limit you to 1/3 of an acre, which is a tiny parking lot. So that's part of the conditional use, and that's part of the variance. We've been down this road twice before on the middle school side of things, kind of adjusting, what, the district's goals were versus, these requirements that the zoning officer and the borough was coming up with. And we got variances both times. And Dave Jones will be at these hearings, as your legal representation, and he's going to push the fact that your ordinance is counterintuitive to itself. So nobody could do projects in the borough without variances or conditional uses to their ordinance, not least of anything of size. Maybe 1 or 2 parking spaces you may be able to do without a variance, but not much more.
So Jeff, to summarize, there's some internal conflicts within the ordinances themselves.
That's correct.
Which really require variances anyway.
Exactly.
And so we're in the process of going through and asking for those variances from the borough, and we just haven't heard back yet. Is that true?
We're just defining what the actual request is. We know we're going to need a variance, so it's just a question of, do we need a variance for several hundred spaces or less than 100 spaces? So that, either way, we're going for a variance. So it's just, if they want to apply, a different set of rules than what we've seen before, so be it. We're going to ask for that variance to the requirement. And then, then we'll have to, as I said, we got approved 2 times before. Does that mean we're going to get approved this time? I would love to say yes, but variance, they're always, they're a separate animal unto itself. So I would like to think that we're going to get it. So with that said, like I said, the only difference is how many spaces are we asking for a variance to the ordinance.
So it's very much a back and forth to some extent with the borough and the zoning officer primarily in the district through K&W.
Correct. The zoning officer for the borough now is a third-party entity. They don't have that in-house anymore. So we're not dealing directly with the borough. They have a third-party entity out of Chambersburg, in fact. And she has her interpretation of the ordinance. So basically, we're going to get together with Dave Jones and, through her review of she did a zoning review of the submission of the stadium facility, okay? So from that review, we know where she stands. So we're going to ask for a variance to those requirements, and then we're going to have our meetings with them, through zoning hearing board meetings and conditional use hearings.
But the borough can't lag this out for months and months, can they?
They could, But typically they have, within their right, they have 45 days to make a decision, from a hearing closing. My understanding. That's my lawyer side of me, which I'm not. But from past experience, they have 45 days to make that decision. So tentatively, like Carolyn said, we're going to, before the zone, we're going to submit this month, or no, October, mid-October. We'll go through hearing in November, and then we'll have the conditional use then in December. They all have to follow a particular course and schedule, because we're actually asking for, I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but it's very process driven.
So despite some, I guess, unique situations with, our municipality, which I'm sure everywhere has its uniqueness,
course,
whatever,
yep.
what is, I guess, normal is that it is like any sort of construction project like this, it's a back and forth of figuring out a way to get something done, right? And ultimately, I mean, help me out if I'm wrong, but a no might be a no for like this exact thing, but it's not a no for like building something, right? It might mean like, hey, you need to make some adjustments here or here, but ultimately you get to a thing.
Well, zoning hearing boards are more definitive, okay? They're either going to, they generally don't sign conditions. We're going through a separate process along with this, the conditional use process, to allow the parking. That's a built-in thing for the borough to say, hey, we can add some conditions to this. And we've already seen some of the ideas that they have in terms of what those conditions might be. And a lot of it has to do with sidewalks. We've been before talking about sidewalks from previous times before them. They're going to push that this time. I'm quite certain of it, especially with the stadium going in. Ultimately, those types of decisions, they could make a decision. They could attach conditions to it at the zoning hearing board. It doesn't always happen. So, but if they were to say no, there is recourse. If the district so chooses, they can go to the next step, which would be to appeal it. You can appeal their decision to a court. So I'm not sure which district court that would be, but that would be, I'm hoping, knock on wood, we don't have to get to that point.
Yeah, well, that sounds a little adversarial, and I'm not sure that we want
Exactly.
to get to that point, right?
But
I mean, my I guess metaphor for understanding I don't know, what's happening now is that we're engaged in a joint problem-solving process, right? Where we have particular goals and needs, and are willing to, I don't know, I guess shape or mold like our designs to meet the goals and needs that the municipality may have as well,
Absolutely.
right? So that ultimately we can get to something that everybody's comfortable with, and that's the process that's occurring right now, right?
That's correct. Yes.
As far as the park, how did you guys determine what our parking needs are? Is that based just on their ordinances, or have you actually done actual counts?
Well,
at some of our games.
We haven't done counts at your games, and I'll let Carolyn speak to some of that as well. But as she said, the parking is based on the number of seats in the, for the stadium use itself. They're based on the number of seats. Okay, so 2,000 seats divided, it's one space per 3 seats, roughly 400, just shy of 400 spaces. So there's other requirements, that same one space per 3 seats applies across many different things within school buildings, the auditoriums within them, the gyms, and classrooms. So they look at everything could have a seat or a person sitting in that seat, and you have to provide parking at a rate of 1 space per 3 of those seats. Is it 5?
So,
5.
Mr. Knock, I might be able to help a little bit with your question.
1 to 5.
When we looked at like what size seating would make sense, we looked at, we're just under 2,000, for the build. So in order to get the most accurate count of like a full football game at Memorial Park, Sarah, Ms. Faunus pulled playoff counts, because it's a little bit harder to determine who's at a game. You've got seniors with passes, you've got kids or athletes who come in for free. So it's a little bit nebulous to get a true hard count for our purposes. In a playoff game, there are no freebies. Everybody has to pay. And so you get a far clearer count of who's actually in a stadium. And I would argue a playoff game is arguably something that is a game that would be well attended, maybe more so than our regular fare. So, our last playoff game against Cedar Cliff, the number I have in attendance is 1,385. Now that doesn't count band, like our band, opposing band, which could be anywhere from 100 to 200 additional people. So even with those counts, the 2,000 seat stadium gets us for would have met our requirements more or less for that playoff game. The New Oxford playoff game 2 years ago was in the 1,300s as well. So our biggest game is going to be the LBJ game. Whether that's above that number or not, I'm not sure. Understanding that it's kind of a build it and they will come kind of thing. Folks know that our visitors' bleachers aren't great. So whether people are choosing to stay home, I watch it on TV rather than come to the not get a seat in our visitors' bleachers. So that 2,000 number is comfortable for us. For at least the playoff games, which would be highly attended.
The first game of the year, we had 700 cars. 625 within the perimeter, very close to the field, and we had 75 at the senior high. Parked up within the middle school. So if we have to abide by some of the ordinances, we can't get close enough with some of the parking. How do we address that other than looking for these variances? And if they don't approve them, what do we do?
There's the potential that you may need to build more parking.
Say that again.
You may need to build more parking. So
Do we have the room to do that if we had to?
there is some room to add some additional parking. But obviously the goal is to not fill the campus with parking before, the Little Brown Jug game. Do we, and that's what we got, that's the argument we're going to make to the borough. Is it necessary to build these massive parking lots for one game every 2 years? So, it'd be great to have a 2,000 space parking lot, but it doesn't make sense. It's not good, financial for the district or anything. Plus the stormwater. Stormwater is an issue, that we've heard all along. More more paved, more stormwater. So those are all points that we're going to try to make, with the zoning hearing board, that while there is the need for some extra parking, it's not 5 or 6 games a year that you need it for.
Well, the first game of the year wasn't the Little Brown Jug game. And I think Bill figured up the attendance for the first, was it 1,500, somewhere thereabouts?
I don't recollect at this time.
I think it was about 1,500. The 5-to-1 ratio that the borough has laid out really doesn't work for the parking needs of the senior high if we have to put all of our parking on senior high property. So it would entail a lot of extra parking and asphalt and then a lot more impervious. If we can get a variance to utilize middle school, that would be great. But we still don't have enough of parking with it either. So we're going to be having people park down at the Memorial Park Stadium as it is. So I want to make sure that we have enough room that we can suit our needs of the school without destroying our ability to build curriculum room in the future. And I want to make sure that we have enough of room for stormwater and plan so that we can have future boards, if they have to expand, we have the room to continue that expansion. So I think when we look at this, we ought to look at the parking needs of the new stadium facility and make sure we can meet those needs. If we scrimp on those, it's going to be a problem. So
Just, I don't know if we've talked about this. I know I pulled up a map of the borough boundaries, and I noticed that we have a neighbor in Volvo, and they have ginormous parking lots over there. I don't know if we've had conversations with Volvo or if that's even something we should do. But they have parking lot. If we're going to put a stadium on this side of the high school, it's even closer to Volvo, and there will, at the minimum, be a temptation for people to want to park in the Volvo parking lots. So we should have some kind of communication with Volvo. I think, at the very least, if they don't want our fans parking in their parking lots, then we're going to have to figure out a way to enforce that or have some sort of conversation with them. But if they, if they're willing, that may be something that could ease some of this parking burden. I don't know that I've recalled us talking about the potential for Volvo being part of the conversation at the very least.
So I don't know that we could count Volvo's parking spaces for our own in terms of the variances or the ordinances that we face. But certainly conversations, the practical reality is when we park at Memorial Park, I mean, it's not great, and people are parking in places they probably shouldn't. I think arguably, the stadium on campus is going to at least have a lot of defined parking, whereas before it maybe catch as catch can, parking at closed businesses and walking. I wonder if that becomes a thing. Do we have to worry about sidewalks, from those properties to ours? But definitely a conversation once we get the zoning process complete, to make that more realistic or better for our fans.
So just real quick, I think you mentioned it, like we have, well, everybody knows, we schedule 5 home football games per year. Knock on wood, we've been pretty successful, so we normally get to host a playoff game in a lot of years. And we that's when you get your big crowds. I wish that we would fill up a stadium of 2,000 seats to see like a boys soccer game or a girls soccer game, but realistically, it just typically doesn't happen. Community involvement just typically isn't there. So when I see these parking numbers of like 400, to me that makes sense, because in my mind, I know more parking equals more money, which means less money that we have to do things, building onto the school or adding this or adding that. So I think that is 400 spots seems very reasonable to me, and I'd hope that the back and forth conversations go well, because I think that is really would be a win for what I see is what matters in all this is the kids of the community. So I hope all those conversations and those meetings and whatnot go well. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the stadium? You can move to the, there you go.
I guess I have one question. So back to your timeline, assuming best case scenario and everything goes swimmingly, we are looking at a new facility, I guess, in September of next year?
Correct. Yep, correct. Start construction in the spring and finish in the fall.
So presumably, I mean, again, best case scenario, fall sports would be able to begin playing on this field, or is it a better expectation that maybe they would be able to transition to the new field like halfway through their season?
Probably
something
halfway
like that?
through. We're looking at ramping things up at the end of September.
Okay,
Right now, assuming everything goes the way we'd like it to go.
all right, thank you.
And so Carolyn and Jeff, just to kind of summarize, like we're currently on track. We're currently on, we're chugging along all three of those processes, right? And still
Absolutely.
within the framework to to finish in that September timeline, right?
Correct, yeah. And actually, the schedule that you're looking at here is updated, and that factors in the zoning aspect of things, which had never been in the previous schedules that we had shared with you. So again, because they run concurrently, we're still working through the land development process, even now, before we've even submitted the zoning. So yeah, we're still on track.
Right, so the train's moving.
Train is moving ahead.
We're at the benchmarks where we need to be, and we'll if there are any any obstacles, we'll update the board as well.
And again, we just have to, as we go, when you attend, each zoning hearing board, and we just see how things go, and if it changes, that's when we'd let you know. But right now, we're on track.
Okay.
Okay.
Bill, with them breaking the start of it being in March, what is our plan to address spring sports? Are we already having conversations with community partners?
I've not followed up with Mrs. Fonish yet, on that, but I mean, we will when the time is appropriate.
The only reason I'm asking is because I know some of the conversations I've had with like neighboring schools and such, like they're already planning, their spring sports, and it's going to be important if we need to use a neighbor's facilities that we're having those conversations.
Yeah, Ms. Fonish is aware that this process is going, and I can follow up with her just to see where we are.
Please. Thank you.
We talked about that at the last athletics committee meeting, so that was, what, a month ago?
Yeah.
And so I think she was starting conversations then, so she's very aware.
Okay. I'm sure she's aware.
Yeah. It will be hard, though.
Right. Dig faster.
I can review or discuss the middle school, high school projects if you'd like, and or answer any questions you may have. So guessing it's on the next slide. All right, so that's the middle school side. You may have seen something very similar to this from last year when we actually went through a process and had this plan essentially conditionally approved with a slightly larger parking lot than what's being shown right now. So, as part of, the SiteLogic's, budget reviews and, and looking at the various buckets for different scope items and costs for those, we went through and looked at how can we save some money, on this side of Everly Drive. So, we're still showing the parent loop connecting to a new parking lot or expanded parking lot on the southeast side of the middle school, looking at roughly 178 total parking spaces in through there on that side of Everly. Queuing for cars, the whole purpose of the parent loop, we're showing roughly, from out at Everly, working its way through the loop, you could stack over 100 cars if need be. So, go on to the next slide. So this is the high school improvements. You can see the additions, and we're adjusting parking just to get us back to pretty much original amounts. We're not looking to add over and above parking. So when we push out some of these additions, it impacts some of the parking in different locations. So we're trying to get back to that 400 number that Carolyn was talking about on the high school side that she was talking about with the stadium. You can also see at the very bottom of the screen there, it kind of runs off, but we're moving the bus exit to line up with the bus entrance on the middle school side. That was part of the previous project, but obviously it just hasn't proceeded yet. So we're going to be, that's all going to be combined now in a new land development plan that's also part of the zoning request that we're going to go through. We're going to have one overall submission for zoning, and it's going to capture for the athletic facilities, stadium, and the middle school and high school side of things. Go to the next slide. That's it. Anyone have any questions about middle school, high school site improvements?
I have a Lorax question. There are some beautiful sycamore trees both on the corner back here and along King Street or Molly Pitcher, whatever you want to call it. We going to mess with any of those? I'm speaking for the trees.
I was driving up Beverly tonight, and we're probably going to impact the one tree, yes. We don't like doing it either. I'm a landscape architect.
Wait, which tree?
I don't know it by name. It's one of the trees along Eberly there. So,
Oh, along Eberly?
yeah,
Okay.
But you're foreseeing one tree? Or,
I have to look.
okay.
The tree behind the band room would be gone too. The two that are right there.
Okay.
You know what I'm
It's the big, beautiful sycamore out on the corner by the stop sign that I'm most concerned about.
Where's this one at?
I think you
way
need
out
to go
on
to
the-
slide 4 to see it.
A special slide for that one.
Oh,
Which one?
no, it's on the corner back by the high school.
Oh, sorry.
It's where the cross-country team
Okay.
changes and meets and
Oh,
stuff a lot back there. It's
Is
my
there-
All right,
favorite
the
sycamore.
next slide. I know what you're talking about. Kind of where that little box is on the upper left-hand side, but further up there, right? Row Road and Volvo.
Yeah. Not going to touch it? Okay.
I was going to say,
Carolyn
that's
with
not
the
my
save.
project, so that's why I didn't really know. So,
In your plans, is Park Place Drive going to, Eberly Drive, is there going to be a gate across there so Park Place Drive can no longer be used? The bottom down there, when you come around, at the bottom of the, coming into, I guess, 4?
oh yeah, yes. As part of that plan, we're going to have probably several gates, and some people don't like gates, but in this case, the gates are going to be able to control and allow certain things to happen at the timing that you want it to. And of course, when the parents are picking up and dropping off, those gates are going to be closed because obviously if you don't, you're going to have folks coming in off of Eberly down Park Place and zoom out to Eberly the way they've been doing it forever. And that's been causing a lot of the congestion and the problems you guys have seen. So the idea is once the parent loop is open, Park Place West is closed during those times. Of course, after hours, different events, sure, you should be able to use those for that exact reason. So.
And Jim brought this up numerous times. At the intersection of Row Road and Eberly Drive, when people come back out and they turn left and go to Row Road, is there any plans on how they're going to get across traffic? I think that's what you asked about, Jim. How they're going to get across traffic? You know what I'm saying?
No.
On that, see up.
Pedestrians will cross over.
No, the people
Eberly.
coming, when they're leaving, they drop their kids off, made the loop, coming back out the Row Road, go back, turn left to go to the traffic light.
Okay.
Now I got traffic coming into the school at the same time. Is there any way, or is it possible for the people that coming from the school want to turn left and turn left?
Yeah, I mean, Eberly will still be two-way out to Row, and the traffic coming in from that same direction. There'll be some cross traffic there at that intersection, if I'm understanding the correct.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. That's one of Jim's
Yeah.
the amount of traffic going through there.
Yeah, the goal is to get people coming out of the parent loop to turn left. Obviously, people are going to do what they want. So the goal is if we can get them to go left, that way the bus movements and everything that's occurring between the two sides, between the campuses basically, it's going to go a lot smoother. It's when you introduce the other cars that go through there that are currently coming out Park Place West and head north to Eberly, and mixing in with those cars, that's when some of the conflicts occur. But you guys also have, your folks sitting out there, letting the buses out. So that's great. And that might need to continue. But the idea is to get traffic away from that internal bus loop that we're kind of creating between the high school and the middle school.
Thank you.
Other questions for Site Logic, K&W, or EI while we have them here? Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right, then we're going to adjourn this meeting, and we will reconvene at 8 o'clock for the normal board meeting. Thank you.
Didn't ask a question.
No, I didn't have to. They getting.
Yep. Hi, how are you?
think. Oh, these mics on?
I think they are.
Knock them off. We got 15 more minutes to find out time.
Hit the power button.
Not sure you can turn it off.
You can,
Where?
there you go. I turned him off.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mine's too, 'cause I'm big now.
You and me both? I don't care.
I was gonna say, we'll get the email from Bill.
Yeah, listen, I forget as much as anybody else.
They'll get over it.
that like
Yeah, Brandy's gonna bring it up.
Steph. I want you to do both.
You got me?
Not that I doubt you, but executive session.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the reminder.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're also quiet. But I'm not starting early. It's nice not to be rushed, though. Yeah, absolutely. Sitting here in the zipper.
How are you?
So you're rushed to be here, huh?
Maybe.
We're gonna chess match.
Right, it is 8 o'clock. We will call this planning and action meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Here.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
Here.
Dr. Michael Lyman.
Here.
Mr. Kurt Noggle.
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Here.
Mr. Charlie Suiters.
Here.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger.
Here.
Mrs. Steph Eberly.
Here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Here.
Mr. Aryan Gaunkar.
Here.
Miss Lily Kell.
Here.
If you'd please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. A reminder that this meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. Now, if you'd please join me in a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the students of Shippensburg Area School District, and also in remembrance of Nathan Stepler, who was a 2011 graduate, and Wayne Craig III, who was a 1984 graduate. Just to note that the board met in executive session prior to this meeting, prior to the the committee of the whole meeting to discuss contract negotiations and the superintendent evaluation. All right, so I believe that there are a few updates. Right, to the agenda approval?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, my
Yeah, so I believe there are a few updates to the board agenda. First, the removal of the finance report, and then under the consent agenda, item 4H, we have a new principal to be approved tonight, and the name and the salary amount was added to the agenda. And then under the action agenda, item 5K is a band trip request. So with those updates to the board agenda, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Rich Scott, make a motion.
Motion made by Ms. Eberly,
Second.
second by Mr. Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, that brings us to the citizens' comment period. I believe we have at least one person who will be speaking to us tonight. So please, please identify yourself by name and address, or just indicate whether you live in the district or not, and indicate which agenda item you are speaking about. Please address all comments to the board as a whole and make sure they are in the form of a statement. Questions will be taken under advisement. Responses to questions will be offered after due deliberation and will be provided by the superintendent at the direction of the board within a few days of the board meeting. All those who comment are allowed 3 minutes to comment. Comments relative to private student matters or personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate school authority outside of this meeting. And then the presiding officer, which is me, reserves the right to interrupt or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or not related to an agenda item. So, Chris Nixon, I believe you indicated you wanted to speak? Oh, no, please,
microphone.
yeah, please come up to the mic. I'm sorry.
Evening.
And I'm sorry, just go ahead and speak right into the microphone because we got
Okay.
people at home listening and they
All
want to be
right.
able to hear you too.
All right. If I'm out of line, yes, please stop me. My name is Chris Nixon, and I'm a parent of a senior high school student. I'm here to ask for action concerning an issue that we've had in this high school starting September 12th. My daughter Shelby was suspended for possession of a controlled substance in violation of Policy 227. If any of you are not aware, Policy 227 groups over-the-counter medication with prescription and illegal drugs. Grouping medications that anyone without an age restriction in the United States can legally purchase at a grocery store together with prescription and illegal drugs. While she did violate this policy and was in possession of Midol, ibuprofen, and Tylenol, she received discipline of 4 days out of school suspension, no high school homecoming social events for the fall, withdrawal of an NHS application, and removal from any fall sports. It was later reversed into a 10-day suspension from the team. This has been a traumatic experience for her, a very tumultuous, not good with the word, but
Tumultuous.
tumultuous, yes, thank you, experience for myself and her father. We've been reminded in this process several times that Shelby was lucky to only receive 4 days suspension instead of the 10-day suspension and 45 days at River Rock Academy that are normally awarded in similar cases. I feel that this diminished her feelings and experience while allowing administration to insist they're only following policy. We were repeatedly told this would be a blip on the radar because of Shelby's achievements and what a great student she is. I don't believe that's true. The severity of these consequences is a permanent impact on her school record, could be a detriment to future academic opportunities in higher education, including collegiate sports and future scholarship opportunities. Secondly, let me elaborate on the mental health aspect of this. What people don't see, looking at the surface of my child, is that this child gives her full attention to everything she does. She's simply not just gifted and not just magically athletic. The young lady strives to be the best at everything she does and works hard every day to achieve her goals. That includes studying over summer, so she's caught up on math and ready to go when she gets here in August. And working on new techniques and training physically in the driveway by herself to get a few more centimeters of a jump. Watching video footage and college players and reading books when she doesn't want to. When I consider the impact of this of what I feel is an over-the-top response has had on her and the lack of empathy that I feel adults with power have shown over her future, we feel disappointed for her. We feel disappointed in the administration that has set the tone for what we feel is a bad example in the handling of this matter. We as parents have always impressed on her to be human first, know the value of communication, and appreciate hard work. This incident has not shown her that. It has shown her intimidation and manipulation. She now fears that if she has the slightest misstep in school, that they'll be watching and waiting. That they will, if she voices concern, she could be penalized. This seemingly simple error has now changed her way of looking at the world. Yes, she is a good kid, but that doesn't diminish the effects of this experience that this instance has placed on her. I'm here today asking for change, a change that is needed because of the way that this policy was enforced. What could have been a Tier 3 offense with no mandatory suspension was immediately given top-tier reactionary measures, even after they verified that every pill in the container was over the counter. I believe that similar to Policy 247, hazing, for those of you who might not know that, or 249, which is cyberbullying, those policies start at level 1 and they tier up, clear to Tier 4. This policy, 227, starts at Tier 3. My daughter was awarded a Tier 4 right off the bat.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but just please wrap it up.
I'm asking the following. Auditing oversight for the board on disciplinary actions to ensure that kids are being treated fairly, because checks and balances work. Discipline levels are better defined and the actions taken be scalable for situational adjustments. The handbook revised to have over-the-counter medicine as a separate subheading to separate that and draw attention, explaining that it is part of a larger policy on controlled substances and to have it be moved to the start of offense in a lower tier of discipline. Handbooks need revised. I understand from previous meetings that that is in progress and that is a welcome change at this point. And I also would ask that there's a change in the appeal for the NHS membership. Currently, we have kids appealing to the very person that granted them the discipline. It should be a committee that reviews this. That's the end of my statement.
Thank you, Ms. Nixon. Is there anyone else who would like to comment?
Drew Alosi from McCulloch Road. Given the work ethic I just heard about Ms. Shelby, I don't know, never met you before and don't know Shelby, but it sounds like a district full of Shelbys would be pretty impressive. I'm here really to say a couple things. One, comment from the last meeting. Second, Mr. Noggle, tonight, just hearing some of the things you said, you talked about future boards and decisions that are made now are going to impact us 5 years, 10 years down the line. That's been done, lived it, I'm witnessing it now. I'm watching Charlie, maybe he was shaking his head, but at some point there was a decision made to not get rid of classrooms in the school district. I don't know what we would do in the elementary schools now if there was 130 students in James Byrd, in the intermediate school, and in Nancy Grayson. So that decision has played out. Another decision I think about Ms. Lentz whenever she made the recommendation to say we're going to go self-funded for our health care. I don't know what the total amount is that's been saved since that decision was made, since she pushed that forward, but I bet it's in the multiple millions of dollars. So when I think about class sizes, I watch the reports, it's reported on every time. We know that right now there's this many more students from last year. Going back in time a little bit, you might know Mr. Blyden Potts, a part-time professor at the university. He did an investigation and a report that he provided us back in 2015, 2014, and it was a forecast. his predictions on the numbers are off by about 300, but in the 40,000-foot view, he is dead on, trending up. Population in this district is trending up. So back when he did his assessment, we are now 349 more students than the 14-15 school year. And that's the reported numbers from that school year until this last report. Those class sizes cannot be maintained in the current physical space in our district. We know that, but I find it questionable, borderline disturbing, that a second suggestion would be to change policy to allow larger class sizes to then fix the problem. I'm not in support of that at all, and I hope that this Board of Education would not be in support of that notion either. So I appreciate the ongoing dialogue. I watch online as much as I can when I don't have soccer obligations with my family or traveling, but appreciate the time that you're putting into these building projects. But 10 years from now, that footprint is going to be in place, and what's going on academically and athletically in our district, having the biggest impact long-term is ultimately what I feel your goal is, and I appreciate your time and effort. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Losi. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on an agenda item? Okay, thank you. All right, brings us to item 3 on the agenda, reports. First from Ms. Kell.
Thank you. Homecoming is this Saturday. This week, the students will be participating in a Spirit Week and a pep rally. The football team will be playing Gettysburg this Friday. Homecoming court was announced on Thursday. Brianne Rotz, Olivia Lebitz, Grace Hipple, Sophie Burt, Treslin Staggs, Cambria Yanish, and Nora Brown were all nominated. On October 3rd, students will have the opportunity to go on a manufacturing and pre-apprenticeship career trip to JST Corporation. Auditions for the high school drama club were held on the 12th of this month for A Christmas Carol. An ACE field trip will be held on September 27th for those interested in architecture, construction, or engineering. The pregame paint war was held at the high school on September 15th. The high school movie club held their first movie night last Friday, September 22nd, watching 10 Things I Hate About You. Today, Monday, September 25th, there was a teacher versus students floor hockey game benefiting advanced team sports. The teachers won 1-0. I will now be passing the rest of the report to Aryan Gankar.
Thank you. College Information Night was held Wednesday, September 20th for parents and students interested in learning more about the college application process. College visits that were held this month include Elizabethtown on the 18th, Harrisburg University on September 20th, and Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, and Manfield on September 21st. The Student versus Teacher Floorball Championship was held today during Flex. Those interested in manufacturing and machinery will be able to attend a manufacturing and pre-apprenticeship field trip to the JST Corporation. Students have the opportunity to join the school tech team. The tech team is accepting application from interested students in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Here, students will learn how to service Chromebooks, help teachers, and anything tech-related. The tech team meets every day during Flex. At the middle school, SAM students are earning champ chances and can cash them in to go outside for lunch and put them in for raffles. The Student Council will be hosting a Unity Month in October. There will be a Spirit Week and opportunities for students to complete activities during the week. Students in ILS, LSS, or ABA classes hosted their first coffee house of the school year. Over 20 orders were completed and more coffee house days will occur. PTO sponsored a back-to-school roller skating party. Between three grades, almost 200 students attended.
Thank you, Mr. Gankar and Ms. Kell. Appreciate your reports. All right, I don't believe we have a Franklin County Career Center report, as that meeting is later this week. So we'll wait for our next meeting for that report. Policy Committee, I believe Ms. Eberly has a report for us.
Yes, the policy committee met on September 13th. We completed the 200s. We are more than halfway through the 300s. And half of the 600s we'll be tackling in October. So just a little follow-up from one of the meetings. It was I raised the question about, regarding how many homeschool students we had in the district. We have 183 homeschool students and one currently attending the Franklin County Career Tech Center. And the policy committee also met this afternoon at 1:30 to review the policies 210, 227, and 233. From that meeting, it was not recommended from the committee that we revise policy, but more some restorative discipline measures. So that's something that, administration and the committee decided not to bring to the board as a whole from that, but administrative regs will be looked into. That's it.
Thank you. And Ms. Wolfinger, you have a report from the Facilities Committee?
I do. We met on the 14th. A couple of the items that we discussed were the rekeying of the exterior doors throughout the district, which is on the discussion this evening. The money will be coming from the maintenance budget. We discussed kind of briefly about looking into adding a camera or some type of system at the rear of the high school as a short-term solution, kind of in that gap between, now and when a project would kind of come about. We chatted a lot about the enrollment at the elementary schools, some discussion about the realignment conversation that we had months back, and kind of the purpose of it. To give some context to actually what Mr. Alosi was speaking about earlier, James Byrd, 22 to now 23, we've had 21 new students. Nancy Grayson, we've added 53 new students from last year to this year. And at SACE, we've had 31 new students. So that kind of lands me at the last thing that we talked a lot about, which I believe coming out of the meeting that there was a full consensus from all four members for us to really start looking into and diving into a solution for the elementary schools and for SACE. Even, 2 classrooms could make a big difference to kind of address those numbers. And so it was kind of our ask to Bill to start kind of working out some of those numbers.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Wolfinger, I believe you also have a report from the Negotiations Committee.
I do. We met on the 20th. We met with the support staff last week. Let's see where I'm at. The goal all along has been to kind of raise the wages and to also increase the room or create room to pay for experience for new hires while recognizing, our current employees too. So we're not, trying to take or discount from them. Last year, wages increased in their contract 15%, and with our proposal that we'll be bringing forward, the raises will be another 8% on top of that. So hopefully that'll close the gap. I can tell you from the feeling in the room, as we discussed earlier, that they recognize that the board is trying to make some advances to close that gap. So you should expect then in October the committee will be bringing forward a recommendation at the next board meeting.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wolfinger. All right, item 3D is curriculum report. Steve, is Ms. Donat? Donat.
Dr. Donat.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. I apologize.
It's okay, no problem.
She's very patient with us.
Just think of the dough, think of the insects around the dough, put it together, it's all good. What I wanted to share with you all tonight are the numbers for our English language learners. As you're aware, those numbers are going up. This year, we currently are required to provide services for 158 students, and that number is not yet final because we're still evaluating students. That's approximately a 58 to 60% increase from last year. So I wanted you to be aware of that. We have 3 full-time Shippensburg English language learners instructors, along with 1 full-time IU instructor helping us, and 1 temporary part-time instructor. And they are stretched full. So wanted that to come to your attention.
Additionally, with the Shippensburg area virtual education, we have some preliminary numbers for you there. For the high school, there are approximately 124 full-time students in SAVE and 45 part-time and hybrid students. In K through 8, there's 31 full-time students and 3 part-time students. So we're looking at a total of 203 students participating in the program, 155 of which are full-time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Can I
Ms.
ask a
Scott.
question? What are the languages that we're working with in our English language learners?
We have a large variety, including Spanish, Thai, Vietnamese, and Nepali, along with many others, but those are the predominant ones from what I understand.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is that,
Yes, sir.
excuse me, is that mostly grade school, or we have that at your, or high school? What level do you think we're getting the biggest increase?
They are through mostly in the elementary school, from what I understand. There are some in high school, but the bulk of them are in elementary. And then we provide monitoring services. Once they do get up to proficiency, we still monitor them for, I think it's 3 years.
I guess one more question. They're building this CCA building outside of town. That's a computer? It's a computer, I mean, computer schooling, teaching? That's CC, hybrid, is separate from us, right? That's not our, we have a computer within the school district. This is a private concern, right? That's there.
Dr. Donat, you gave the numbers for our cyber program.
For our cyber program only, yes.
Those are the students who are Shippensburg students who are within our self-contained
So that's the
program.
one that's out that we don't.
Correct.
That's good. Thank you. That's cleared that up for me.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Donat. All right, item 3E, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Goetz. We'd like to recognize once again our generous benefactors who have donated the following. David and Andrea Weaver, $331.51 monetary donation through the Jeff Craig Memorial Donation Account to support our high school FFA. Cook's Repair Center, $333.51 monetary donation, again through the Jeff Craig Memorial Donation Account to support our FFA. Susan and William Haynes, $331.51 through the Jeff Craig Memorial Donation Account to support our FFA. And Thomas P. Gleason, Esquire, $500 monetary donation to support our SACE Minithon for Diamonds Club.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Item 4A is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Item 4B is the finance report. Is this the item that was supposed to be taken off of the agenda?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Finance report. Item 4C is the Board of Directors meeting schedule for the upcoming year. Item 4D is the dual enrollment agreement between Messiah University and the district. Just as a note, this is an online program here, so this does not require any transportation. Item 4E, Rashini, employer reporting engagement proposal for the upcoming year. This has to do with requirements from the Affordable Care Act that the district needs to meet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Item 4F is a request to form Leo Club at the high school. This is the Leo Club that is sponsored by the Shippensburg Lions Club, so I believe that this is a high school equivalent of the Lions Club. Item 4G is an amendment to the senior high school handbook. Administration recommends the approval of an amendment on page 37 to the high school handbook under students and their guests. The current language reads, students will not be permitted to attend any dance if they've been suspended in the time period prior to the dance, and below, and the verbiage will read if this is approved, students who have been suspended by the following offenses: weapons, drug, alcohol, controlled substances, physical altercation, or vaping within the time periods listed below will not be permitted to attend the dance held at the end of that specific time period. Students who have accumulated 3 days or more of suspensions within the time periods listed will not be permitted to attend the dance held at the end of that specific time period. All right, is there a motion to approve, well, actually, is there any items that anyone would like to take separately, 4A through 4G?
I'd take 4G separate.
4G separately? All right, is there a motion to approve items 4A through 4F?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger,
Second.
second by Ms. Eberly. Any discussion on those items? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, item 4G, is there a motion to approve item 4G?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Eberly,
Second.
second by Mr. Scott. And discussion?
The reason why I brought this up is I'd like to hold off on this or table this until superintendent he says he's going to look into some things before I approve this.
Mr. Scott, it's a little hard to hear you. I
Sorry.
heard you talk about
Well, I mean,
tabling it.
like as everybody said, there's going to be this discussion about the handbook. I'd like to wait till you get done with those discussion with what you're going to proceed. You told us you're going to do before we approve this.
So this is kind of a separate issue from what was kind of discussed today?
It says substance.
So this is for students who had even 1 day of a suspension of any sort were not allowed to go to the dance. This kind of just remedies, like, when we're talking about like a tiered approach, making sure. So this is going to correct those. And is this retroactive? This is retroactive
Upon approval, yes.
on approval. So students who had been suspended for 1 day are now afforded the opportunity to attend the dances. So this is another issue.
So none of the things we discussed in policy affects this.
Not currently.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this item? All right, all in favor of item 4G?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Item 4H is personnel. We have a variety of new appointments, a termination, several resignations, transfers, and promotions. Is there a motion to approve item 4H?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item 4I is also a personnel item. This is administration recommends the approval of the following appointment. Ms. Nicole Avery as a principal at Nancy Grayson Elementary School at a prorated salary of $85,000, effective date to be determined. Hiring is dependent upon successful completion of all paperwork, clearances, and I believe releasing from her present district. Is there a motion to approve item 4I?
So moved.
Approve.
Motion made by Ms. Eberly,
Second.
second by Ms. Wolfinger. Any discussion?
Who is she?
Well, I was going to ask her to introduce herself afterwards. I think it would put a little pressure on her to introduce herself before we vote on it, because that would seem a little weird. So, but afterwards, I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Ms. Avery, would you mind introducing yourself to the district?
Of course. I'm Nicole Avery. My background overall is in English in the secondary setting. I'm the cyber coordinator currently for the Tuscarora School District. Very excited to be on board in the Shippensburg area. My husband and I have lived here now with our 1-month-old daughter. We have lived here for 9 years. She's lived here for 1 month. So we're very excited to be a part of a district that we have heard nothing but amazing things about. And we're really excited to make this district hopefully even better for our own child as she gets to go through here someday. So looking forward to being a part of the district and looking forward to getting started as soon as I'm able.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is she on a 60-day?
So we've got a she's got to break the news to Tuscarora, and I'm assuming they're going to be very sad. And typically districts hold just as long as they have to, and then release. So it can be up to 60 days in the worst case scenario.
I'm not sure if you know how popular our YouTube channel is. Chances are it could already be, the news could be broken. All right, that brings us to the action agenda. Item 5A is expulsion waivers. There are 2 cases here. Is there a motion to approve item 5A?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Eberly. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5B is contract with the Pennsylvania School Boards Association for Administrative Regulation Services. This is the contract that we have with PSBA for them to help us with updating our policy, keeping them up to date in regards to changing times, etc. The cost for this service is $4,632 and will be paid over the next 2 fiscal years. Is there a motion to approve item 5B?
Brent Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5C is a memorandum of understanding between Pyramid Chambersburg and the district. Administration will recommend the approval of the MOU with Pyramid Chambersburg Drug and Alcohol Outpatient Treatment Program to facilitate the delivery of school-based drug and alcohol outpatient treatment services to complement our own program. Is there a motion to approve item 5C?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger.
Second.
I'm sorry, who said that?
Dr. Lyman.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Dr. Lyman's throwing his voice with the microphone. Any discussion on item 5C? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5D, administration offices, new location. So I believe that this was not on the discussion agenda last meeting, if I'm correct. So this was pushed to, but this is a small thing. We have to report to the state where our administration offices are, and we have a new address for our administration offices. So this is a recommendation to approve the change of administrative offices address from 317 North Morris Street to 9318 Molly Pitcher Highway. Is there a motion to approve item 5D?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger.
Second.
Second by Mr. Suitors. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5E is the land development plan. So on June 12th, 2023, the board approved R. Lee Royer and Associates to perform a land development survey and check the current septic system on the new administration building located at 9318 Molly Pitcher Highway. The plan, along with additional required paperwork, is attached. Administration recommends the approval of this plan. Is there a motion to approve item 5E?
Brent Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott.
Second.
A second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion?
Yeah, I was looking at them plans. You don't have a thing you can pull up on the screen there, do you? Bill, you have something you can pull up there?
Mrs. DeLongwood would be able to, which would pull up the attachments.
It would have been I don't know. It was probably on that, and it had the drawing of the.
Is that it?
Yeah, what you got that existing how are you going to get to that how are you going to get to that parking lot where you're building out on the right, like facing Route 11 and be on the left-hand side?
So, I mean, we get to that spot.
If you're staying on Route 11 and you're keeping that stone, whatever that is, a drain or something in there between the existing parking lot and the new parking lot, how do you get into that other parking? How do you get into that parking lot on the left-hand side?
We're just going to drive around. I mean, are
you going to go across stones?
Are you talking about like sidewalk thing that's kind of in the middle?
It's not a sidewalk, it's existing stones, it says on the drawing, it was gonna, not to be removed.
So it's
It's like a drainage ditch.
yeah, until such time as, we decide that we need to do more paving or not, we may have to make do with what's on the plan, Mr. Bard. Ideally, we're just adding, the spots so that we can get, folks there for meetings and.
Well, like the parking lot, to be, like, if you're standing in front of the building to the left.
Am I facing the building,
How are you
Jim?
getting to that parking? That's what my question is. If I'm standing on Route 11, looking towards the building, parking lot, you got that where the sign's at, everything to the left of the sign. How are you getting into that? Because it says existing stones not to be removed. Drainage ditch, that you can see the stones that goes the whole way around to the building over there to where them. Yeah,
Mr. Bard, I'm not aware of any stone right there currently.
That's what it says it's going to be, not to be removed.
The parking lot's gonna be over top of that, it's where the utilities are that run underground.
I don't know if you heard that. So,
Go ahead,
Troy, can you?
That's where the fiber line for the Comcast comes in. That stone's actually right now under the grass. That's where they
That's
run the
not
line.
on the surface?
No.
No, it's all grass, Mr. Bard.
Okay.
When we first bought the property, there was some construction there, so it was dug up and you could see it, but the grass has grown over it now.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens.
Any other discussion on item 5E? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item 5F is Sentinel One licenses for workstation servers in the district. Administration is recommending the purchase of an endpoint detection and response solution. This is part of the cybersecurity initiative we have purchased with the intermediate unit. The pricing is part of the consortium pricing. And there's a description there of how the system works. Is there a motion to approve item 5F?
Let's go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott.
Second.
A second by Ms. Wolfinger. Is there any discussion?
I assume this is more, don't end up with a ransomware attack kind of prevention stuff.
It's another layer in that defensive system.
All right, hearing no more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item 5G is the waste management contract. Administration recommends a retroactive approval of a 3-year contract with Waste Management of Pennsylvania for one 4-yard dumpster at the new administration building, the 9318 Molly Pitcher. The monthly cost after the initial $250 one-time delivery charge is $528 and will be paid out of the maintenance budget. Is there a motion to approve? What comes before H? G.
Move to approve.
Is there a motion to approve item 5G?
Move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Suitors.
Second.
Second by, made the motion?
I did. Nathan Cook.
Motion made by Mr. Noggle. Sorry. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Apologize for that. All right, item 5H is change orders from the East Coast Contracting Administration recommends approval of the following change orders for the middle school additions. You can see the changes there, and there's actually a credit from one of the change orders, so we're coming out ahead with these 3 change orders, it looks like. The above changes have been reviewed by Mr. August, Ms. Lentz, and Mr. Kreitz. Is there a motion to approve item 5H?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of item 5H?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item 5I is the Safe Schools bollards.
Bollards?
Bollards. Thank you. It's a word I don't say very often. At the intermediate school. So these are, administration recommends the approval and installation of 3 bollards. Did I say that right?
You did.
balls. So these are like the big concrete planter things or other sort of concrete devices to keep vehicular traffic from being able to impede onto the sidewalk and into the building. The cost is $14,476 and will come out of assigned balance for district safety. Is there a motion to approve item 5I?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Noggle. Is there a second?
Brent Scott, second.
Second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion?
Do we know what color these will be? Just because I don't want them to look like the front of a Target.
We'll make sure that they don't.
Well, they're not going to be red. Fortunately, concrete has a grayish hue.
It can be dyed. Just saying.
We're hoping maybe even possibly the kids can paint them.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But we'll see.
Make them say the
Any
word.
other discussion on item 5I? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Item 5J is agriculture and youth grant. You also did not see this on the discussion agenda. There's some urgency with this. Kelly Byer and Lisa Boltz, agricultural teachers at the senior high school, are requesting approval to apply for and accept a direct non-matching grant in the amount of $7,500 through the state ag and youth grant program. This program helps fund eligible projects, programs, and equipment purchases that benefit youth and promote development in the areas of agriculture, community leadership, vocational training, and peer fellowship. If awarded, the funds will be used to purchase a saw stop table saw and a wood bandsaw. Any additional expenses would be incurred by the senior high school. Is there a motion to approve item 5J?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger, and there was a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Item 5K is also one that had some urgency and was not on the discussion agenda last week. This is a band trip request to Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, and a Bahamas cruise. The administration recommends the approval of the senior high school band request to travel to Universal Studios in Florida and Bahamas cruise from March 7th to 12th, 2024. The students will be performing in the Amber Theater aboard the Royal Caribbean's Allure of the Seas. A complete itinerary of the trip is attached, and I believe that this is a fundraised trip, right? The students raise the money to participate in this activity. Is there a motion to approve item 5K?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Eberly. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion?
Do they need chaperones?
What'd you say?
Do we need
Do they need chaperones?
We will need lots of chaperones.
I'm sure there are going to be many, many chaperones. Whether they have all signed up yet or not, I don't know.
No, they have not.
Are you volunteering, Dr. Lyman?
Be voluntold.
Any other discussion on item 5K? Is there a motion? Oh, wait, we had the motion. All in favor of item 5K?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Item 5L gets us to the middle school and high school design approval. Administration recommends approval to move from schematic design phase to the design development phase for the proposed high school, middle school project and associated site work as detailed by SiteLogic and EI Associates during the Committee of the Whole meeting from last week. Or I guess this was some time ago. Just to reiterate my understanding, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, this is moving us along in the design process. This is not committing us to any one particular design. This is getting us, for lack of a better way to put it, this is getting us to sort of closer to having real numbers associated with the various parts of the project, so that then we can make a decision formally as to what we are approving or not approving. Is that more or less correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to approve item 5L?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Dr. Lyman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Is there any discussion?
I have discussion about this. They're going to make a schematic on what we saw last time, that blueprint, correct?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. There's a
sorry.
You
vent
need to get a
blowing.
little closer to the microphone.
I'm sorry. They're going to make a schematic on what we told them we wanted, right?
Correct, and then this process allows that to be refined even more, and then ultimately put out to bid, Mr. Scott, where we will get those, where estimates become reality. And then from that point, we're going to be able to make some decisions on what we choose to add to the project.
Are we paying for that?
We are, as part of the design process, and we've already approved. I mean, this is a part of that entire process that SiteLogic and EI do to design these things.
I understand that, but I have problems paying for something that I don't need. We as a school board, and Dwayne Burke, to his credit, homed on that constantly. We need to make a decision what we want, not what we need, what we want. And every time we go through these plans, it costs money. We say we need money. Why don't we as a board sit down and say, there's things on this thing that we're not going to pass. I know we're not going to pass. So why pay them to do a schematic for things we will not?
So I'm not sure if we understand. I just want to clarify what we mean by schematic. It is literally the finishing designs that you've already seen. So if we don't follow through with this, then we will have wasted money, because we would stop a process that's already begun.
But I also don't believe in putting more money behind bad money. Bad. I'd rather, if that's the case, because I know the things that we said we thought we wanted, and I'm hearing about the elementary school, that's a concern to me, big concern. And I know you're planning on things, but I'd rather go sit down and say, okay, this is what you and the administration of the board sit down and say, this is what we want.
So Mr. Scott, we've done that to this point. That's how we got to this point at the high school and the middle school. It's been a 9-10 month journey at least or more since I've been here. And this takes us another step forward for the board to make those decisions. So if we're considering, elementary, and that is a different project, we will at least know what we can afford within a budget, because we will have actual numbers in the form of bids from companies who say we are willing to do this part of this project for this amount of money. And so the board will make those decisions as they arrive. We can't get to that spot without moving into this phase of design.
So there's certain things that I can visually see, and the board members can visually see, that that we tell you or vote or talk discussion, tell you that we don't want.
So part of this process is going to get us to a base, what's known as a base bid. That is the minimal bid, which at the very least is going to include $8 to $9 million in asset protection and upgraded systems. And part of this process is to determine which items go in and how they're bid. And there's some magic to that, I guess, on SiteLogic's side to get us the best pricing. And then we will know, because we will have bids in hand, which projects we want to do. So this step is kind of, I hate to use the word formality, but we are very interested in making sure the board has approval at each step. This is a transition step from a design phase to a rubber meets the road phase, for lack of a better word or phrase. But we want to maintain transparency and give the board every opportunity to ask questions and move on to approval. Okay, so we're committed to nothing. We are committed to nothing until we decide to accept the bids or reject them. But I'm not sure.
Like he said, what they're going to do is included in the service. They're not going to pay.
We're not paying extra. This is
okay. That's
right. I'm sorry. I thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
This is not an additional service. This is a continuation of the services that we have.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
They're moving ahead with this if we vote for no money.
So depending on the size of the project determines the size of EI and SiteLogic's compensation. If we don't move on to this project, then as there are in my office, numerous plans that have been drawn and discarded, we will have come back to that point. So, this gets us to the decision point to decide what the will of the board is in terms of their intent at the high school and the middle school.
If it helps, I remember from the presentation last week, I think, or like 2 weeks ago, that Site Logic and all the other, our architects and whatever, your fee is a percentage of the ultimate project cost. So if that's correct, then if we decide not to do everything that they design, then we're still just paying like a percentage of what they build. So I don't think this is going to be the case, but let's say they do design $20 million worth of stuff and we only go for $10 million of it. Their fee is based on that piece. Is that correct? Yeah. So
That's why I want clarification. That the whole ball of wax, no matter what they do, we don't have to pay any more for it. Because I see change orders coming down that we pay more for change, which I understand. That's part of business. When you build something, there are always going to be some changes there. I just want to make sure that I'm not paying for something like to me. I would love to have a new gymnasium here in the school. I know it ain't going to never happen because we can't afford it. So, but I also know that I'm not paying $3 million for a daggone extension on the gymnasium. So
we're paying for what they build.
Okay, all right, no more. That's okay.
We are committed to it.
We're not committed to build anything.
When we
Not yet. We're not. We're only committed to build something on the next vote when we get those bids in and we say, okay, we like this price tag. Go ahead and do it. That's when we make the commitment.
And at the bare minimum, Mr. Suiters, I think we should commit to doing the asset protection to make sure that the systems in this building continue to function and continue to provide an environment that's safe and comfortable for our students, and it doesn't end up costing us more money down the line. But again, that is a board decision to make when the time arises.
Which I believe that vote wouldn't be until January. I think that's what's on the schedule, potentially January. For the STAR, okay.
So there's kind of one more phase, right? So there's design development and construction documents that gets you right until you go out to bid. So at that point, we really start looking at the projects. We would have a better understanding of what this building would like to maybe see built in addition to the asset protection projects. The bids will come in, and then you'll have the opportunity to see what with everybody, elect to choose your project or build your project based on deducts and.
So you guys are actually going to be drawing up architectural prints, submitting them out to subcontractors for bids? Is that what this process is?
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Noggle, I didn't quite hear your
Okay.
question.
So during this process, once we vote to move ahead, you will be drawing full set of architectural prints.
Yes.
Submit to steel contractors, brick masons, that type. So that's what this is.
So we are refining the project drawings to get to a point where we can put them out on the street for contractors to bid on.
So when we were doing steel, we would call out and get a full set of drawings for steel so we could bid the steel packages.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so we don't pay any more for that. And some of
No.
the sections of the building I don't think are going to be done. We need to determine, I think that's what I'm hearing, is we need to make sure we're going to get a lot of the parts of the school that we need. Like Fred said, gymnasium maybe. So why would we draw the gym, upgrades, send them out for price when we think that probably may not go?
again, that's a decision for this board to make. So a part of this whole process is what you're paying now are for those design services. That's wrapped up in the soft cost fees. So paying EI Associates, K&W, who is here, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers to design the potential projects that you have for this building. You're only paying for design until it goes out to bid and you decide to elect which project you would actually like to build.
When it goes out to bid, we don't pay for that. We're not paying for that when it goes out to bid, correct?
You're paying EI and SiteLogic to administer the bid process, yes.
So that's in addition to what you're selling.
No. The contracts, the professional services contracts that you voted on previously, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, all of those services for those fees are within those contracts. So as we move along through this whole design process, you are paying SiteLogic, K&W, EI Associates for what they are designing up until this point.
And we're paying you, SiteLogic. We
Yes.
pay all three entities.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
Yes. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for coming up to the microphone. Any other conversation on this item? All right, if we could have a roll call vote, please, on item 5L.
Mr. Jim Bard,
No.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Kurt Noggle,
No.
Mr. Fred Scott,
No.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
No.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
5 yes, 4 no, motion carried.
All right, that brings us to the discussion agenda. So there are various items on the discussion agenda, as has been our practice in the past bit. I don't want to go over each of them individually. I do want to point out item 5A, which is the profile of the graduate, which Mr. August reviewed during the committee of the whole today. So a copy of that is attached, and we'll have that on the action agenda for next meeting. And I believe there are only four items. A request for early graduation, some policy revisions, girls wrestling, and the rekeying of exterior doors. Are there any questions on any of those discussion items?
Not a question, but more of a comment. So, Mr. August, is this like exact paper on our website somewhere? Or
So it's, I don't know that we formally posted. I've been waiting for board approval.
Gotcha. Well, I hope that.
It may be on, as we built it.
So I hope that after we hopefully approve this whole thing, that it goes on there, because when I look at this, again, you said earlier, like it was this wasn't built by like you, this wasn't built by us, this was built with input of whoever was willing to give their input in the community. Mm-hmm. And if you look at these things, and you ask yourself, if you're going to hire someone for a job interview, like these are all the things that you want, in my opinion, a potential employee to be able to do, to be an effective communicator, to be a good collaborator, an innovator, a thinker, be responsible, and be resilient. Like this is excellent, in my opinion. So for all the people who took the time to fill out those surveys, and some of them were a little bit time consuming, but I had fun doing it. And then there was, a couple of meetings about it. Thanks to everybody, because I think this is great. And I think this also, again, I think it's been said once or twice, like me personally, the experience that a Shippensburg student has isn't just a test score at the end of the day. It's what we're doing to try to build, young people to be responsible adults after they leave here, no matter what they go off to do, whether that's to go to post-secondary, to go to college, to go to a tech school, a trade school, community college, to go to the workforce, to go to the military, it doesn't matter. All of these things are going to be effective for all of our graduates. So I know you get super excited about it. I do too. So Thanks to everybody who had input in that.
Well said, sir.
Could, just for the benefit of myself and the community at large, how does profile of a grad then sort of translate down into sort of the day-to-day operations of the school district?
So Dr. Donat is going to lead that process for us, and it really comes down to getting teachers familiar with what's in it, and then really kind of deciding, because it's a K-12 experience. It says profile of a grad, and that makes us think of the high school, but it's really a 13-year journey for our students. So it really becomes down unpacking what do these things look like at various grade point bands, and then incorporating design within lessons and being intentional about doing the work. There's a ton of work on the back end of this, which is also creating the rubrics that describe when a student has met them, has not. So that there's a lot to unpack, a lot of interesting work, for our curriculum and instruction director to lead. But ultimately, the goal of this is for it to be a tool and for us to have common language, and have our teachers use it as a tool in their lesson design, ultimately to get us to higher levels of engagement, and more meaningful work that does just what Mr. Kressler alluded to, better prepares them for. On the back end, we can talk about, how we measure it and how we have evidence that we're doing this, which in turn can be used with an employer. Here's a portfolio of what I can do along this profile of a grad, even submitting it to, ultimately to college admissions officers. So the implementation of it is almost endless. And it's really, kind of narrowing it down and seeing what we need to prioritize first. It is a journey. We're going to build momentum around it as our teachers and students get more use of it and hopefully live it, on a regular basis.
Thanks.
All right, any other discussion on any of these items on the discussion agenda? All right, well, if you have questions or concerns, please get to administration. Those, you can expect to see those items either on the consent or action agenda next board meeting. All right, that brings us to citizen comments regarding non-agenda items. I believe we have at least one person who would like to speak. Ms. Lehman, is that correct? All right, so just a reminder to let us know who you are and where you live, and make sure that you address the board as a whole, and that your comments are in the form of a statement. Questions will be taken under advisement. Responses will be questions we offered after due deliberation, etc. You have 3 minutes for your comments. Comments relative to private student matters or personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate school authority outside of this meeting. Ms. Lehman.
Okay. First, let me make sure this reaches my height. So I'm Roxy Lehman. I am in the district. So I just want to talk a little bit about Nancy Grayson and the capacity of our students in the school. I know sometimes just looking at numbers, it's easy to say, oh, we've got time, we can do this, we can do that. But I just wanted to kind of put it into context for everyone on the board. So right now we are limited to 11 free desks. That's it, in the whole school. So if we get 11 more kids this year, there's no desks. With that, we also have had to start splitting our assemblies because we've reached the operational capacity of our gym. We have to, with our student numbers and our teacher numbers and helper numbers, we now have to split it up in half. So we're doubling costs of a lot of, fun activities we're trying to bring to the school. In addition to that, the holiday shop, which is something we do every year, we have no extra space. So now we're going to have to cut that program or try to do it off hours, which thereby means it's not necessarily all inclusive of all of our students. It's just who has the ability to come after hours or with parents. So again, I know that internship takes shape. We're going to talk about adding classrooms eventually, but I think this is more pressing, just seeing the number of increases that we've had last year versus this year. I know we're at 525 at Nancy Grayson, and we've never broken 500, according to, admins who've been around for a long time. So I think that's very telling that we might not have, 2 years to build something new. We need to start planning it now instead of taking a vote on it, a year from now. So that's it.
Thank you for those comments. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to board comments. I guess we'll start on my right this time. Mr. Suiters.
I just noticed that we had a lot of items that were not discussed in the other meeting.
We do try to avoid that. There were some deadlines that were outside of our control.
Yeah, I know. We got to think ahead too. I just seemed like there was quite a through them tonight.
Dr. Lyman?
Nothing.
Mr. Scott?
Yes. Site Logic and KW, I don't dislike you, and I'm not trying to get rid of you. so I don't want you, but I have concerns, and I don't blame you for a lot of the rigmarole going on. Like I said, when past board member here, Dwayne Burt, he always said we should tell you what we want. You ask us what we want. In my opinion, we as a board have not fulfilled that obligation. So I don't want you to take it personally. Your drawings are great. All the other kind of stuff, I got no complaint. Now, I'm not happy about the change orders, but the other stuff I can go along with. So I just want you to know there's nothing personal, just questions I got to ask. Okay?
Ms. Wolfinger?
Really, I mean, I just, it's kind of eye-opening to listen to Ms. Lehman. Numbers are something that don't lie, and to know that there's only 11 desks left in Nancy Grayson is very concerning to me. So Charlie, as chair, I would just ask that if we could schedule a facilities meeting sometime soon to possibly look into, how we can start having those discussions about the elementary schools.
Mr. Kressler?
Sure. Let me start by saying I saw this first one. If you don't watch Channel 74, the student news that's on, you should. And then you should, I believe, also like and subscribe, because the stuff that the kids do on there is awesome. And I keep caught up on current events with the school, with the high school specifically with that. So Channel 74, within the last week, told me that our golf team's having our best year in school history. That's awesome. I believe our field hockey team is on a 3-game win streak. Boys soccer had won 5 out of 7. Before, I think they may have lost this afternoon. I'm not 100% sure on that. And volleyball was riding, I believe, a 5-game winning streak heading into tonight, which is pretty incredible too. And then the other thing I have is I'm a parent of a Nancy Grayson student. So the Fun Run fundraiser is like incredible. I think the school goal was $15,000 for the PTO and the student body, and within like a week, roughly, they're at over $19,000. So absolutely incredible. So shout out to all the people at the school who are, giving the information out, teachers and all those things, to the PTO, and then to the parents of the kids who are going out there and saying, hey, reposting things on social media, you could use this stuff, because it's going to pay for a whole lot of fundraisers for our kids. So that was incredible. I mean, every time I jump on Facebook, I see there's like, well, new goal hit. So congrats to everybody involved.
Thank you. Mr. Bard?
None this evening.
Mr. Noggle?
I'm good.
Ms. Eberly?
I'd just like to say welcome again to Mrs. Avery. We're happy to have you. And say thank you to Shannon Keach for the template of the profile of a graduate. I'm sure she was beyond excited. That's definitely her wheelhouse. And I just want to wish our SASHA students a fun, safe homecoming, to remember to make good choices, and nobody cares if you can't dance, just get up and dance.
Before I make my comments, I noticed that our student body leadership stuck around for the whole meeting, and I want to applaud you for that, and give you the opportunity to make a comment if you have anything to say. Mr. Gonkar or Ms. Kell, if you have any comments? I know you're caught off guard a little bit. How about I make my comments and give you guys another chance? I'm very grateful also for our new principal hire. It's a really good feel. I mean, it was a bad feeling to not have like all of our administration in place, and it's a really good feeling now to have those administrative positions filled, and to have someone at our elementary school. So very grateful for that. Welcome to the district. Very excited for you to join us as soon as you can. I got to say, in regards to the plan that we just voted on, I'm a little puzzled by some of these comments. I mean, in the spring, we had lengthy discussions about what the board needed. This process about what the board needs has been driven by this board and by administration. We have expressed those needs and our goals to SiteLogic and the others, and the SiteLogic team has created a design to meet the needs that we have established. Now, they have helped us with that too, right? I mean, we contracted with them ages ago for an assessment of our needs, and they've given that to us, but we've spent years and years sort of going back and forth and figuring out which of those needs are real and which maybe can be pushed off and which maybe just aren't that real. So to say that, you know, they're telling us what we need, I don't think that's true at all. Like we have been engaged in this process, and in the spring, this board said, like, look, here's this fuzzy vision, ship taking shape. This is where we want to go. These are the needs that we want addressed. And we don't know exactly how those are going to be addressed because we haven't had the people do the work yet, but we had a vague sort of fuzzy idea about that. And we've contracted with SiteLogic and the others to help us create solutions to the problems that we know that we have. These problems aren't going to go away if we, say, stop your work. In fact, it will just push back that much further these problems being solved. Now, I know that there are other problems that need to be addressed. The elementary school is way heavily on my mind, and it's one of the things that, keeps me up at night when I can't stop thinking about school board stuff, is how we're going to take care of those problems. And they are immediate. And I know that administration has those immediate and pressing. And that is not like a back burner kind of conversation. And it may be that once we see, the price tag on some of these pieces for the high school and middle school improvements, that we decide, like, no, we just can't do that because, like, here's this other priority and we just have to do that first. But to say no now just seems to push us back like a long time. So I'm really confused by that opposition. I'm frankly, I don't know. I wanted to say that I'm very excited about us making progress towards real improvements that future generations of students in this district can enjoy and need. So anyway, those are my comments. Ms. Kell and Mr. Gonkar, if you have any comments, yeah.
I see we've had like a problem with like an increase in population in our small town, but with our current challenges, I'm pretty grateful for the deeds of the school board and how we have handled this increase. Hopefully in the future we'll have an eye on the future and then do what's great for the students and the school board. I mean, the school district, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gonkar. Ms. Kell?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, I just wanted to thank everyone for this opportunity. I'm really grateful to be able to speak on behalf of my peers, and it's something I really value, and I know the importance of it. I wanted to discuss the suspension policy over events such as dances and things like that. I think that I know the controversial nature of the policy, and I know that it has been controversial since the beginning of the school year with students, and I think that it is very subjective, case to case, and I thought maybe potentially we could, or administration could propose doing some kind of trial-based evaluation of each case, because I think every case is very different whenever it comes to the suspensions, and I know of people who are very unique in their matters of suspension, and I think that being able to acknowledge that and being able to give the student an opportunity to defend themselves would be important and impactful, especially for these are important times in students' lives. People care about the dances and things like that, and I think that being able to advocate for yourself is something that you need to learn to be able to do for adulthood, and I think that that would be a good opportunity to do so. But again, I just wanted to thank you guys for this opportunity, and I know that it's not something that should be taken for granted, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kell. I really appreciate those comments, and Mr. Gronkar as well. Thank you for joining us. All right, information date saver. I'm not going to read through all of these because they're sort of on the horizon, but we do have same time, same place, October 9th, the Committee of the Whole meeting and the school board meeting, the second Monday as usual. I guess I should note that this week, I guess, is homecoming week, if I'm not mistaken, and the homecoming dance is this weekend, which means the homecoming game is this weekend as well. Just alert everyone to that. All right, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, thank you.